thing that we've never lacked as a country is the sheer number of passionate people who want to see the growth of our country, who want to move our country forward. And most of us have been opportune to live in the West for quite a long time. And we've been opportune to have opportunities to work in organizations, both public and private sector. And we've seen the potential of our country because we've seen what the actualization in these countries. So we can see that there's a huge gap somewhere. Now, the Nigerian British Business Forum has been together for a number of years. We've had fantastic event. One of the most recent events that we had was the Nigerian Economic Forum, where we discussed extensively about the economic situation in Nigeria. We had some really prominent Nigerians also attend, and the vice president was unable to attend, even though we had extended the invitation. I would invite the first keynote speaker and the chairman of the president of NBBF. I call him a personal mentor, and there's no doubt when you look at the sheer number of Nigerians in this country, Mr. Falabi Andu happens to be one of those that has pioneered a lot of positive things when it comes to our country and even this nation as a whole. Mr. Falabi Andu is an MBA graduate and recipient of numerous prestigious global awards, and these awards are synonymous to the African Project. This is a role he has played quite remarkably over 30 years. Afolabi, a fiercely driven individual who operates with great passion, excellence, commitment, and dedication in whatever he does, can also be described as a highly skilled organizer, a gifted communicator, and a brilliant strategist. It gives me great pleasure to invite my mentor, Mr. Afolabi Andu.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I welcome you all to this historic event. I say historic with the understanding that at some point in time, the Commonwealth of Africa was decided by a few individuals late in the 19th century. The partitioning of the geographical landscape and its economic potentials was done by a united force from outside the continent. And the rest is history. Ladies and gentlemen, the Africa of our dream can be reinvented this time around, not by an outer force, but by the persistent desire of its people to make positive impact. It is self-evident that there is a wide gulf in infrastructural development in Africa. African countries today find themselves on the fringes of remnants dropped by China, IMF, the World Bank, to fund its ever-increasing infrastructural needs. The continent requires $1.1 trillion annually over the next decade to be able to fully actualize its potential for economic transformation. Over half a century ago, the stakes were high, and there was a huge promise of progress as African nation-states attained independence. Unfortunately, the continent surrendered the economic power and infrastructure to its former colonial masters. Over 75% of projects in critical sectors were handled by foreign expatriates with the aid of multinational corporations. It is quite disheartening that the majority of the projects executed by foreign expatriates have had little or no impact on the economy of the continent. The huge billions of dollars spent on Harare International Airport in Zambia, several rail projects, and other mouth-watering beautiful aesthetics across the continent by China alone over the last 2 decades are estimated to be in the region of $560 billion. Today, as we gather to address issues that has constantly drawn us aback, critical areas to be addressed by the infrastructure group will cover unnecessary infrastructures, sources of finance, the identification of key economic drivers for each geographical zones, and wealth creation as a panacea for social causes such as insecurity, unemployment, youth restiveness, amongst others. Governments constantly make the mistake of funding projects that have little or no impact on the masses. Infrastructure without the ability to drive economic development in critical sectors have been a major bane of Africa's development. Bridges have been built in urban centers without access to good roads to convey food items from the rural areas. Airports are located in places where hunger prevails. Roundabouts and beautiful T-junctions have taken priority over pipe-borne water, while schools have been built in places markets were most needed. Rather than provide mini-grids and repositioning the continent for renewable energy sources, billions of dollars have been expended on hydro energy from national grid, yet with epileptic power supply. This has been a case of misplaced priorities at the expense of over 1.3 billion Africans. Let me take you back to the era of industrial revolution in Britain late in the 18th century, where the conversion of metals and natural resources contributed quite significantly to the development of machines that propelled industrial growth. Roads and basic social amenities were constructed to provide the catalyst for commercial agriculture, and new cities emerged from villages which once relied on subsistence living. Infrastructure financing was structured where economic activities were most heightened. A chain of reactions for wealth creation exists when the right projects are executed. For instance, the Ajaokuta steel rolling mill in Kogi State could have positioned the country as an industrial hub for steel, providing the much needed source of raw steel to be converted for industrial use. Over the years, we have played the blame game, passing the bulk of the responsibility on the government. As I speak, the debt burden of African countries stands at $80 billion and can grow quite exponentially to $200 billion within the next decade. In 2018, China pledged another $60 billion more to Africa, out of which $10 billion of the said amount goes to development financing. It must also be added that a large chunk of the foreign direct investment embarked upon by lender countries are earmarked to support projects which has the greatest return on investment to the lending countries. With a total gross domestic product of $2.19 trillion, the continent is weak in adequately financing key projects in critical sectors. The fiscal burden is so enormous that 75% of budgetary allocation on all the African countries are consumed by debt financing and recurrent expenditure. Nigeria's debt burden, for instance, has risen significantly within the last 4 years and now hover around 24.5 trillion naira. Within a year, 2.6 trillion was added, and this trend has continued to render the economy impotent and on the brink of another recession. State governments are worse hit. They aren't creating wealth, and most of them are left with meager resources after struggling to pay workers' salary. As professionals and stakeholders, the diaspora community must set to launch out and salvage this situation. I am of the opinion that the value chain in the financing of key infrastructure can uplift the living standard of many and enhance the country's capacity to produce. At the heart of this gathering is to chart a course of government for government at all levels, providing the financial, technical, and manpower resources. I believe we have the will to do this, as we intend to provide consultative services for short, medium, and long-term infrastructure roadmap. In essence, the Nigerian-British Infrastructure Group is set out to achieve Commonwealth plundered under the banner of foreign aids and assistance. Capital must return back to Africa, and it must remain in Africa, as this is the golden rule of economic recovery. Aside from finance and manpower, need-based infrastructure and ecology has been neglected to foster political projects. Projects have been executed without recourse to the community needs, thereby leading to social instability. The case in reference is the economic opportunity derivable from ranching and livestock settlements. Dairy production, beef and poultry value chain potentials are huge. If the necessary infrastructure was in place, the Roga debate might not have taken an ethnic dimension alongside fair concerns. In fact, Nigeria still operates way below capacity in beef, egg, and other dairy produce. That irrespective of tribe or location, the vast land can accommodate 1/3 of the population if they were to turn to farming without stress. The southwestern part of Nigeria benefited largely from the vision of the late sage Chief Obafemi Awolowo, who, as the head of the regional government, embarked on the establishment of farm settlements, which developed alongside industrial zones. Basically, the raw materials from the hinterland served the manufacturing sector and bolstering exports, whilst farmers rose above the middle class afterwards. Nigeria, being a subset of a larger African state, presents a laboratory of execution of needs-based infrastructure. The Niger Delta region has its own unique ecological, social, and economic peculiarities. But if any government or group of individuals endeavor to embark on uniform projects across the country, it will amount to a waste of resources. As a matter of fact, irrigation projects and boreholes have been executed in the same region in the past. These are projects which could have had significant impact on drought-ravaged lands of the north due to its proximity to the Sahara. The Al-Majari phenomena in northern Nigeria, and by further extension, the Boko Haram insurgents, and recently banditry, has further revealed the bitter truth that what we fail to do becomes our undoing. I believe such young children could have made a living for themselves and not become tools in the hands of selfish politicians who take advantage of the innocence. The Igbo model of skill acquisition and funding startup, the biggest startup structure in the world contributing 40 billion annually, is a perfect example of how infrastructure for self-sustainability can produce individuals who will become financially independent. In conclusion, the Nigerian British Infrastructure Group is set to assist government by helping to identify areas of greatest absolute and comparative advantage, as well as help determine its unique infrastructure niche that will make them economically viable within the immediate and long term. I am pleased to once again welcome everyone to this important event. Let me remind you that the diaspora remittances by Nigerians currently stands at $24 billion. Hence, the task of nation building is within us and must be done with great urgency, utmost loyalty, and commitment to the good of all. I am deeply persuaded that we can be the change, and our deliberations today can change the course of Africa's development. Thank you very much, and God bless you.